So maybe I'll bring it back to then. It sounds like we know how to save the world, right? Like we know how to we know how to save the world. We know how to save libraries now. We know we know the possibilities. We have some ideas for our emerging roles in this 21st century world of information seeking and research. So then how do we as professionals who go through a certain step-by-step process of getting our degree, going to library school, getting maybe an internship or an assistantship somewhere, getting our first professional role, and then of course, hopefully succeeding up to the stars, right? Where along those lines, how are we gonna learn how to do these new things? How are we gonna learn how to be these new valuable presences on our campuses and in our libraries? And this is maybe it's a bit of a theoretical question too, because it requires a shift in mindset, and it requires that our educational system really rethink. So I went to library school not that long ago. It's been within the last decade that I've graduated from library school, and I will admit that I learned almost nothing that applies to what my future trajectory in this profession now looks like. So,
wow,
what do you think are the ways that we're going to learn how to be in this new role, or in this new shifting landscape?
Wow, that's so interesting. With this respect, we really come from a different world. In my country, we do not have library schools anymore.
No.
Really?
For precisely this reason.
Wow.
And they went away because, and this is my third library that I'm a director of, I have never hired people from library school. It's very different in Europe from the situation in the US, in that, and let me talk about my own country, I know
Sure.
best of that situation, but since the digital era, I think we have been trying to hire people, recruit people who have new skills. Because if you don't have the new skills in-house, you cannot change, and the moment you see you want to change. And of course, we had enough of the competencies, the more classical competencies. We needed new ones, and we still do. We hire people who have been trained as a professional teacher to teach information literacy. We recruit people who have just had their PhDs in any discipline, so that they are the consultants for the researchers in that discipline. These people have now no experience in libraries. They have no library school background. So they work very differently. What I see now, I must confess, that the core values that you learn in library school, they do matter. So now we're looking at how do we train a person that comes in to the library about the core values, core issues, the history of the library. What is a research library compared to a library that is maybe more like a college library and more focused on education? What's the difference? What's the difference in collection building? And all of that, it matters. So now we're trying to see another gap, because we got more and more new people in who have wonderful new competencies that we need. So, but then there's this other gap. But it seems to us that is doable to sort of solve that problem. But at least we have new competencies. We have people who have experience in research, in managing research data, or analytics. Well, all of those things. So we hire people to do that. And then again, it's also true, what we talked about earlier, is that what is a library? What is the concept of the library? And before you know it, the new people also think, oh, it's books. So what you have to do is in-house talk about this and talk about the concept. What are we about? How are we different from an IT department in the university? And that has to do with our history and our profession. And you have to talk about it. We now are thinking of making an introductory program for every new staff member to talk about these things. But we shouldn't do that as a library by ourselves, of course. It should be, maybe that's the new education. Education is difficult, and I think there's more disciplines nowadays where people think, well, these people come fresh from school and their knowledge is already outdated. So maybe it should be professional education. You come into a profession and then you learn along the way, and we have to have maybe library schools that do just that.
That seems to be what happens organically a lot of the times anyway. You know?
Yeah.
The conferences and so on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's partly how we do it. We travel a lot.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people to do that, and we luckily have the budget to do that, because that's the way we learn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still important, but it cannot be the only way.
Well, you know, the one, when we've been talking about an open environment, and I'm thinking when you're just talking about the difference between Europe and the US about this, about teacher education and so on, what is the difference you see now and in the near future between how open environments exist in the United States, open publication obviously, and open publication exists in Europe?
Well, there shouldn't be a difference. Our researchers and our students also, I think, increasingly work in international networks. So open is global. If it's not global, it's not open. So it should be this global knowledge environment. And the trends are that in all among us, I think, there's global players for so many things, even for local services like Uber and Airbnb and all of that. So that is the direction. Of course,
the EU has a different function in driving open access, or the British government, than does the United States government. Wouldn't you think that?
well, I'm not sure.
No.
The EU says we want open science.
Mm-hmm.
Open science is crucial to stay a competitive region in the world. Well, that's what every region wants, right? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. There might be differences, and there's difference in time, and difference in players, and etc. But if this is true, if open science is crucial to be competitive in the world, well,
Right.
then it should be possible to make a connection, at least, in the way we do that. And this is maybe also where libraries are wonderful advocates, because we are so used to standards. Standardizing is our thing.
Oh yes.
Well, standardizing in making an open world of information is crucial. So again, a core competency that we used to use for the carrot catalog, we can now use for other services and we're not the only ones who believe that, but it's important. So, and I'm not sure exactly how fast things go. I know that, of course, on a federal level in the US, there's also a drive for open. And open data also, but I'm not sure exactly how that works in terms of influence on what really happens. So I don't know the landscape well enough to understand the biggest research funders. Maybe what is crucial that we do is look at the network of research funders in the world. which ones are local, which ones are global, and if they align their policies, and they've already started to do that also, that is an important basis, or maybe a group to work with. As libraries, I think we should stress the global collaboration.
But at some level, what's interesting is when resources are increasingly available free to the user, the question of discovery for that user is not local any longer. So as you've said, you don't need really to provide a discovery tool on a local collection any longer. But I guess one of the questions I have is, how can discovery become more global, as in it's free, everything's free to the user? How can that user have a discovery tool that is more global and less, more Google-like in that sense, but not just for not also for vacation sites and so on? How can discovery catch up with the openness and availability of information?
Well, that's interesting, because there's an assumption under your question, and that is that there should be discovery for scholarly information.
Yeah.
Well, there's Google Scholar, and there will be others. We don't have to do that. The market will do that.
Right. So if it has nothing to do with libraries,
No.
where's it going to come from? Where is global discovery going to come from?
Well, it comes from private companies right now.
Yeah.
So as long as there's parties who have an interest in some way, they will do it. And I'm also convinced that you have to do in the public domain what cannot be done successfully in the market. But if something is of interest, the market can do it better. We could never have developed a Google or Google Scholar. And we were the ones, libraries, who said, we know about retrieval. That is our expertise.
Yeah.
I'd like to wrap us up on a fun question. So, Anja, I'm sure that you, as we all do a ton of reading of professional literature, articles, papers, white papers, everything under the sun that has to do with librarianship and data and preservation, etc. What's the last thing you read for fun?
For fun and not professionally.
No, just something for fun that you enjoyed, maybe a novel or,
Oh, let me think. I'm reading a novel right now, which is very interesting, but may not sound as fun so much. It's called Stasiland, and it's of a German author who writes about how the Stasi worked in the German Democratic Republic, but it's written so well that it's almost funny.
Okay.
There's so much humor in it.
Little Stasi humor.
Yeah.
That I learned something, but it's also funny. It's because of the skills of the writer, and she's got so much humor that I'm enjoying this tremendously. And of course, I brought it on my e-reader.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
Because if you travel a lot, an e-reader is just wonderful. It's just that you don't know exactly how to hold it.
And you can't smell it. That's my problem. I want to smell that
really?
book. Yeah, I like book smell.
Really?
Yeah.
Old smelly
I love
book?
old smelly books.
Okay. You are a real librarian.
Well, on that, thank you so much, Anja. Thank you for joining us and for all of your insight and expertise. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting discussion.